will be implementing some new features, which is going to be the enemy spawner. We're going to start with a simple point spawner, and then we're going to move into a slightly different type of spawning. For this type of spawning, we're going to introduce an enemy that constantly flies down and tries to ram into the player, which is going to be like a rock. So let's just start off by quickly opening pane, resizing our thing to 60 by 60, and let's create a new enemy shape for this game. Like so. Let's give this a red color inside. Just save this as, actually, since it's a rock, let's make it kind of like brown. Let's call this rock enemy. Now that we have the rock enemy, let's open GIMP and just to remove the alpha channel. And GIMP takes ages to load. As always, there we go. Let's just quickly minimize that. Drag this guy in. Okay, now that we have this in GIMP, right click on an image, add alpha channel. Now we can select these. As you can see, the select tool is already there because that's all I ever use it for. Now we're going to export it as the exact same thing, replace, export, and we can close this. Now with this done, let's go into our resources, sprites, and drag these guys in. Now I see we have a material, so let's just create a new folder for materials. And instead I created a material. So let's go into a folder, type in material, and just drag in our background so it's nicely organized. Now let's click on any of our enemies and make a copy of it. Actually make a prefab. So let's just call this enemy basic. And now let's just do some cleanup in here. So let's create a folder for bullets. Let's create a folder for enemies. And we can leave everything else as is for now. Now let's drag any of the normal enemies. Let's just delete that one there. So we have this enemy, that's fine. Let's unpack this enemy now, and let's add in our new enemy. So let's rename it now to the rock enemy, like so. Where are we? So if we go into resources, we will first change its sprite, but first we have to set it to a 2D sprite and press apply. The pooling has to go somewhere else. So let's create an empty game object, reset its position, and let's call it pooling manager. So this will store everything that needs to be pulled into one game object so it can get out of the way and we can actually drag it into management. Now for our rock enemy, of course, like I said, we want to change to this specific character. And what we will want him to do is not to have an ability to shoot. So we definitely want to remove this. And we just want to kind of make him spawn and then move forward. So I believe, yeah, can't have the anchor script attached to him either. So let's just leave it as that for now. And basically all he'll do is just fly down in a straight line towards the player. And if player shoots him, he will explode. And this is why he will retain the enemy script that we attached previously to him. So let's just open up the script, see everything's okay. If it is, we can drag it as a prefab. Where are we? What would be enemy create a chance? Oh, interesting. So this is a chance of it spawning what's it called, a power up. Well, we don't want the rocks to spawn power ups, so first thing I'm gonna do is set our probability rate to be higher than 0, and we actually don't want to roll a 0, so we will change this to a 1 and 101. Right, so 0 will be our value. That will never happen. So now if we click on our enemy rock, we'll change the probability rate to 0 because we don't want our rock to be able to shoot, because that would be weird. Maybe we might go for some hidden rocks or something like that, but this is not what we want for now. And let's create a new game object, and let's call this the spawn manager. Again, we're going to reset the position. And now let's go into scripts, and let's create a new script called spawn manager. Double click to open it. Now we can get rid of everything that's in here, and this is what we will need. So first we will need the object that we need to spawn. So let's have a private game object, and that's going to be enemies to spawn, and of course that's going to be an array. And we'll need a location from which they can actually spawn. So serialize field, private transform, and that's going to be the enemy spawn locations, and we're going to set it as null. Now our rock enemy also needs to have a movement script attached to him because he will be moving. So I believe there is a script that we use right here. Where are we? What's this forward movement? Can we use forward movement? Yes, we can actually, but we would actually have to create a variation of this class. So let's create a new class, and let's call this enemy movement, like so. Let's click on our rock and attach enemy movement to him. Now that we have enemy movement, we want to open the script, and we will inherit from the forward movement script that we have. Now we can get rid of these guys. So right now our enemy movement has the exact same code as the forward movement, which is exactly what we want it to do. We want to destroy the object when it disappears. Everything here is fine as it is. Actually, what we do want to do is we want to override. We might have to change how this operates. Yeah. But let's first just give this a quick test. So let's press play and see what's going to happen. There you go. So he flies really, really quickly. You will just reduce the speed down by a little bit. It's far too quick. There you go. So he goes in, and that's exactly what we want him to do. But what the problem is that if he's going to be outside of the screen, he'll just be straight away disabled, and we do want them to spawn a little bit. Actually, no. So I guess we should be fine with spawning them in here. Anyway, let's test it out. So let's add our spawn manager in. Let's click edit. And now what we're going to do is we will create a simple coroutine. So that's private IE numerator, and it's going to be, let's call this a wave spawn. Wave spawner, like so. It's going to yield null, so we don't get any errors. And when the game starts, what we want to do is we just want to start this coroutine, like so. There we go. So let's create a header. So it's going to be the spawn location and enemy. And we are going to have another header called the spawn variables. Now, some things that we want to have control of is private void wait between spawn. It's not a void, it's a float. And that's going to be like 2 seconds. So what we're going to do in our actual coroutine is we are going to use a while loop. So while it's not while it's true, but while a specific condition happens, and in our case is going to be let's create a private int spawned enemies counter. So when we start, our spawned enemies counter will always be reset to 0 because we haven't spawned any enemies now. And in here we will do while our spawned enemies counter is smaller than where are we? Enemies to spawn dot count dot length. So while this counter is smaller than these guys, then we just keep spawning an enemy and making him appear on the screen. So what we do in here is we'll do int random enemy location is equal to random.range, and that's going to be between values of 0 as well as the length of our location sheet. And then we will do, well, for now we'll instantiate, later we'll make it more make it better. So let's just do game object and call it object to, well, enemy to spawn, and that's going to be equal to instantiate, and that's going to be our enemies to spawn at the position of spawned enemy counter, and we are of course casting as a game object. And then we will do enemy to spawn, where are we, dot transform dot position is going to be equal to enemy spawn locations at the position of random enemy location dot transform dot position. Well, I guess we don't need the transform part here because this is a transform in the first place. There we go, and that's how we set up the spawn. And of course, afterwards, we need to increase our counter by 1. Another thing that we can also do in the spawn manager is manage all of the enemies whenever they've disappeared or not. And that's something that might, for example, display a game over scene screen later. So let's create a new header and called spawned enemies management. There we go. And let's create a serializable list. So let's create a list of game object, and that is currently active enemies, like so. And what we want to do is every time we trigger a new wave, we want to reset that list to 0. So we want to just empty it out. So for now, we will just do list.clear. Later, we'll probably use something better. Well, later we will use garbage collection to fix this, but for now we're not doing that, so it's fine. And in here we will do active enemies dot add enemy to spawn, like so. So now we have a way of tracking our spawned enemies as well, which is great. So handles wave spawning, and of course, since our start is very small right now, we're just going to do this. Now, the biggest problem right now is that we don't, there is no delay between this, so all of this will try to happen at once. So we'll do yield, wait, return. Wait, what was it? Wait, what was it? I actually forgot how to do this. Wait 4 seconds. There we go. And we want to wait for the time between the spawn. So this is how often each enemy will actually spawn. And maybe we want to have some kind of a start delay. So let's add another float. Start delay spawn start delay, and let's set this to something like a second. So then we just do another yield at the start, which is going to be of our type spawn start delay, like so. And now let's prepare the spawn manager into the actual project. And we do this by creating some empty game object onto the scene. Let's use a color to mark it out, and let's put it above the actual scene. Let's reset. I don't know, let's just do it like this, maybe. 1, 2. Let's just do 4. Let's call them spawn locations. Now let's grab our spawn manager, look at it, and grab in our spawn locations like this to populate the fields here. Now we can remove our rogue enemy from here, but let's make sure the prefab is updated with the new script. And now let's go here, let's go into our enemies and drag few of them. And the reason why we have it as an individual prefab is simply because we can control better how many prefabs we have. Later on, we'll move to scriptable objects, so each wave data can be saved as a scriptable object, and we can just load in all of the scriptable objects at once, rather than manually assigning it like this. We can even add some kind of a level editor to make things easier. But for now, for the very first prototype, I believe this is a good enough solution. There you go. So we have one enemy appearing, another enemy appearing. There we go. I believe our enemies, the problem now is that our bullets don't seem to be affected by the garbage collection, which is weird. So that's something that we definitely want to work on. So let's have a look at the forward movement. Actually, let's test our enemies while we're at it, and let's just narrow, smaller the gap. It's far too big right now. So wait between spawns, let's make it something like 0.5 seconds, and let's actually increase how many enemies we have. Like this. So we don't, there you go, that's better. Okay, so the biggest problem right now I see is that this is not running. When it should. So let's give this a try. If not, we'll just revert back to our older ways. Oh, actually, this does happen. It's just that it happens outside of camera because it prevents any camera. There you go. So now the bullet should be deleted. Let's actually pause. Click on our player character. Where are the bullets spawned? That's the real question. They should be in pull bullets. There we go. So the bullets are being properly disabled, which is fine. That's exactly what we want. Okay, with this we have managed to implement a very nice solution to spawning a simple wave manager. And now let's quickly finish off what we did yesterday, which is the creation of our files. So we're going to go to the main menu, and we want to work on our options because we want to have some kind of a temporary options for now. So let's open up our script. So on selected options, that's something that we need to add to the game. We also need something that will disable all of the UIs. So let's actually create a region here, and that's going to be the button interactions, like so. And let's end our region here, like so. Now, the reason why we're putting this as in a region is because we can just hide it like this, which is very nice. And here we'll create a private serializable, which is going to be of type transform. And this is going to be our pause panel. And we want to create a function called private void disable panels. And what this will do is it will disable the all of the panels that we basically don't want to have active. And that also means that in start, we will just run disable panels. So we have everything loaded correctly at the start. And since pause panel is one of those panels, we will do pause panels game object set active false like this. Now in here, in options, we will do the reverse of that, like so. So when we click on it, the optional panel will actually enable itself instead. Now let's create a new panel. Which we want to do in canvas. So let's create the panel. For now, we're just going to keep it like this. I actually don't mind. Or should we actually lower it? Let's make it about this size. There we go. And let's call it panel options. Now, in the options, temporarily, we need a way to delete the data. So let's create a button, and we're going to call it delete user data testing. And delete data. There we go, like this. So what this will do is this will just remove our current existing player data, which is exactly what we need. Now let's create a new script into the UI, and let's call this our options menu, like this. Our options menu can be directly attached to our panel right here, if it works. And hello, Unity. This should disappear now. Okay. There we go. Nope. I thank you for just not working. Okay, there we go. No. Okay. I think it's time to, since Unity is playing up, we are going to call quits on this one for now. We will be back with this later, and we'll be finishing this off. But this is it for today. We did implement a very simple wave spawner, which is great because that means we can soon add points and different player variables to just play around with different types of player ships. And then, of course, we can start working on the options as well as a side thing. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.